Hello, once again. My name is Eben, and I'm glad to be with you here for another lesson. And this time we're talking about the format of your IELTS speaking. So, if you are planning to write IELTS, what should you know about a structure, its format as regards a speaking test? Now, first of all, this is what we're going to look at in this video. We're going to look at the number of parts in the speaking text. Then we shall also look at the nature of questions for each part. Okay, so there are a number of parts, and we want to know the nature of questions of each part. Lastly, we shall look at some topics or some areas where your speaking questions and other IELTS questions are taken from. A lot of the time, some students will say that, what if I don't have an idea about it? When I get there, you know that all of the questions that come, or yeah, all of the questions that come your way in your speaking test and in your other IELTS questions are questions that you should know something about because they're taken from everyday, live scenario and issues. All right. Okay. So first of all, we have, as a way of overview, we have three parts to your speaking test. The first part is what we call task introduction and interview, and that's basically task one. We have what we call long term, individual long term, which is part two. Then your part three is what we call discussion. These things have been explained in the video about the introduction. So I'll move on into specificity. Let's look at part one. What goes on in part one? So as you can see on the photo, part one is basically introduction and interview. Okay, so what is the interview about? What is the introduction about? So this is a time where you introduce yourself to the examiner. Even though this part is for interview and introduction, I will talk about the introduction part. In this slide, I'll go forward to talk about the interview part. So what goes on in the introduction? In the introduction, you give the examiner basic information about you. And these pieces of basic information include your name, number one. So the examiner is going to ask of your name, okay? And he can say something like, what's your name? And you have to answer, all right? I will show you how to answer in the video of the tips. For now, you can be asked, what's your name? And after you've told the person your full name, you can also be asked, and how do I call you? What's your name would demand your full name, and what do I call you? Obviously, your first name, which is often the easier to pronounce. Number two, the examiner would want to know where you come from, all part of introduction. If you met somebody and you want to introduce yourself to them, you have time to talk a little bit, the person should know your name and where you come from and all of that. All right. So he or she will ask you where you come from. Then also, your employment status is going to be asked, okay? And by employment status, what I mean is whether you work or you school, okay? So you will be asked these questions, and what they ask you whether you work or you school because, amongst other reasons, there are sets of questions for people who work and sets of questions for people who have just left school and so haven't started working, okay? So it's very important that you indicate really what you do, whether you work or you school, all right? So that you will not be given any sort of question about work when you basically are just a student, all right? So this is how part one, the introduction part of part one looks like. We go to the interview part. So here's an interview. You could see two people seated. This is just how your IELTS interview is going to look like. The table isn't so wide that you'll be seated at the far end. It's not going to be that way. It's a very closed table, so you need to keep a fresh breath and all of that as you go, okay? All these are basic things that are necessary for your confidence sake, all right? So you also need to be very confident. I will do all these things when we get to the tips aspect, but for now, this is how your interview will look like. And once again, we want to indicate to you that this whole period of the part one, which involves the interview and the introduction, lasts just 4 to 5 minutes. And these are questions, these are areas that your questions may come from. Okay, some of these areas, not all of them. Okay, so you can be asked questions about tiredness, trust, desert, running, and all of that. Okay, so it's just everyday life. You don't need to go trying hard to memorize anything. Just feel free and rehearse and be somebody who is good in speech, and you just be okay. You trust me, you just be okay. All right. So these are your areas, and you will be asked questions. The interview part is going to be question and answer. The examiner asks you a question, and as soon as they are done, you have to start responding. All right. So it's a give and take kind of session. All right. And you don't forget to keep a smiling face and all of that. Yeah. So we leave part one. We're done with the introduction and interview. So the interview part basically will be asking your opinion about weather and makeup and all these things. Some of them. Okay. For instance, they can ask you, should you trust people nowadays? Or are you an interesting person? Or do you like sports? Perhaps they can also ask you, do you often spend time alone? These are introductory type of questions, okay? Sorry, these are interview type of questions, and you need to elaborate your answers. The introduction part doesn't need long answers, but this part needs long, quite elaborate answers. So part two is also what we call the individual long turn. And once again, I want to say it's a monologue. It's a monologue because at this session, once the clock starts ticking, the examiner keeps quiet and you have to talk. Talk about what? You have to talk about this. So this is the long run. And in the long run, you are given 2 minutes to talk because you'll be given a 2-minute task. I repeat, you will be given a 2-minute task. And your task is going to be to talk about something on a particular topic for 2 minutes. That's why it's a 2-minute task, okay? So for instance, the topic may be about pets and you can't be told, talk about your pet. So you will be given a paper. For now, you'll be given a question like what you see. Talk about your pet. So 2 papers will be given you. One will be the paper that has a question, and the question doesn't come alone. The question comes with guidelines, okay? Guidelines as regards what you have to say and what you don't, and what you needn't have to say. But basically, is what you expected to say, which if you don't say, you risk losing marks. Okay, so whatever they give you in the form of guidelines, kindly make sure that they all feature in your speech. Now, your guidelines will start with this phrase very often. You should say, and it follows. So what should you say? Here come the guidelines. You should say, because you're talking about your pet, don't forget it's about your pet. So they're giving you this task. And with this task comes a list of guidelines trying to help you, guide you through what you should say in the 2 minutes. So you should say what the pet's name is and how you got it, and also why you like it. So this is how your guidelines look like. Okay, they can be 4, 3, the numbers vary. All right, but make sure that within the 2 minutes you have talked about everything here. Okay, right. So we move on to the third one. But before you start talking on this topic, which over here is your pet, you will be given these things to help you prepare. You'll be given a pen and a pencil. You will be given a pen and a paper with which you will make preparatory notes of about 1 minute before you start talking. So you'll be given 1 minute, and in that 1 minute, you'll be given a pen and a paper to begin to jot down some notes, some point that you will be using for your 2-minute talk. Okay, so your preparatory time is 1, and once you are done, you'll be talking for 2 good minutes. So this is the part 2, and here I present you the part 3. Part 3 here is just what we call follow-up or two-way discussion. It's a discussion because it has the nature of part 1. The interview type of questions are the same that are employed here, just that in your part 3, the questions are asked based on the topic you talked about in part 2. So for instance, we talked about pets. So all the questions here are going to be about pets and, you know, animals and their benefits and all of that and the like. But the examiner is not fully restricted to stick to that. Sometimes they may choose to bring in something outside the topic you talked about in your part 2, but it's not very frequent. It doesn't often happen that way. So before we go, here is a summary of what we have just looked at so far. We have said that you basically will be given a task to do, and you have several parts of the task. You do your part 1, your part 2. Your part 1 has an introduction and interview. Then your interview questions or your whole IELTS speaking questions come from the such areas. Then we moved on to say that in your part 2, we call the individual long run, where you're given a task, and with the task comes guideline, as well as a 1-minute preparatory time, for which reason you are giving a pen or a pencil and a paper. And you, after that, will zoom into part 3, where you will resume some discussion with the examiner. So altogether, your speaking test lasts 11 to 14 minutes. Once again, I want to thank you so much for joining me, and thank you for joining Dreams Consult. For more information, kindly do not hesitate to contact us. Thank you so much. Have a lovely day.